What's going on YouTube? Global Buzz here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be going over the Fort Wayne regionals and all the noteworthy results and trends that we saw over the weekend, because this is a pretty important tournament, right? Because it was pretty much day one-ish of the official Regulation C format. Yes, there were online tours going on prior to this, but for the most part, everyone was just like a little on edge, like, what am I going to bring? Do I need to watch out for Wo-Chien? Am I going to do like tinglu stuff? And this is a pretty good baseline as far as like results are concerned, because now people have something to go off of, because now from these results and whatever transpired, now they're going to consider certain things to bring or develop in terms of bringing to the next regionals, which is EUIC, maybe the online tournament over the weekend. So that in that sense, this was a pretty big tour in terms of like, where do I go from here? All right, so first of all, we're gonna recap the winning team, Justin's team, just for a little bit. We did that kind of in the previous video, so I won't spend too much time on it. But then after we recap Justin's team, we'll take a look at some of the trends and some interesting results that we saw over the weekend. All right, so let's take a look at Justin's squad real quick again. Okay, so once again, this is Justin's team with the choice band Dragapult stuff with the Chien-Pao, and again, the whole idea with Dragapult, according to Justin, he wanted to bring Dragapult, and he figured why not just make it a little bit better and just bring the Iron Bundle with it to make it do more damage, right? Because Choice Band Dragon Ball hurts, and now you add the Chien-Pao, and now it's just you doing even more damage with Dragon Dart stuff. You just have to be careful when getting locked into Dragon Darts, because, if you're in a one-on-one scenario against, the Fluttermane, things can get a little bit tricky, and then that's just an auto loss, right? Which is why when we did the team building video yesterday, we adjusted Justin's team a little bit by just going with the Life Orb set. So this way you have something else to click besides Dragon Darts when you're up against a Flurry, and you have something else to do. But that being said, it's a pretty standard balanced team with the Arcanine Amoonguss backbone. And then from there you have Booster Energy Fluttermane with Dazzling Gleam as the third attack option with Protect. And then it's a standard Palafin, right? So, based on what Justin was saying, he didn't really bring it that much in the beginning, right? He brought it to like, what, 3 times, and then a little bit more in day 2, and again, the times that he did bring it, it was good, but he didn't really bring it most of the time, and that's okay, and that's expected, right? Because Dragapult is a little bit more niche-y, as I will say, but again, you do a lot of damage with Terra Steel, Terra Blast into the fairy types, aka Fluttermane, and then the U-turn, the bug damage just does a bunch of chip damage into the other Runation Pokemon, and it lets you reposition out into either the Palafin, the Arcanine, or even like the Amoonguss stuff, right? So this way, if there is a Fluttermane on the field, you can repivot out into your Amoonguss or Arcanine, for example. So that was one way to get around the unfavorable matchup leads, or in that sense, right? But other than that, Chien-Pao makes your Arcanine hit harder, so now you can just like go for more bulk in that regard. And I don't know Justin spreads. I think he's going to release a rental relatively soon, so we'll see what happens there. And then, the Palafin also can start hitting harder with the Jet Punch stuff, thanks to the Chien-Pao nonsense, right? And then the Amoonguss is just there for like redirection support, Spore Pressure to create space. Pollen Puff is really good against Wo-Chien because it's 4 times strong against it. And then overall, it's just like a really, really solid, balanced team. Fire, Water, Grass Core, we know what that's like in VGC. So, shout outs to Justin again for not only bringing Dragon Ball, but winning it, winning the regional with it. And then initially he predicted he would go like 0-9, but then he ends up going 9-0, the reverse, and then just ends up winning it, right? So shout outs again. He's a true trooper. 2 regional wins in his first 3. That's absolutely insane, all right? I don't know what else to say about that, but Justin, you are a GOAT, all right? But moving forward, now what we'll do is we'll take a look at some of the other teams and see what other Rune Pokemon did well and what other team compositions had success over the weekend. So let's move on to the first topic in the video. Okay, so now we're back onto the Victory Road website, where we have all the teams and the results and the open team sheets. We can look at some of the sets, and the one thing that I wanted to talk about, at least with the beginning of this video, is how Baxcalibur Balance just pretty much ran through the tournament, or was like in pretty much a lot of these top cut result teams. And there was 2 kinds of Baxcalibur Balance teams that I saw, and we're going to take a look at both examples as a representative of what we saw. So I want to look at Fiona's team first, because this one is one of them, and this one has the Gyarados ChiYu variant, where you still have the same 4 with with Tinglu, Baxcalibur, Amoonguss, Fluttermane, And then the Gyarados and the ChiYu are the two difference makers versus the other version, right? So first of all, loaded dice, you know, Baxcalibur is really, really good. When I was testing it and when I was using it, I loved it a lot because you're just able to put a lot of pressure on opposing Amoonguss, right? And you can even put on a lot of pressure against opposing tinglus, right? Because even though they are relatively bulky, but you can chunk it so hard with Icicle Spear and just do so much damage that, you know, after an Icicle Spear, you know, even if it does live, you can always just clean it up eventually later on, right? But Baxcalibur is really nice. And then with the Glaive Rush pressure, it also does a huge chunk of damage as well. And then Ice Shard just cleans up, especially if you're able to get things, you know, to Focus Sash in that regard. But it also does a lot of damage just because of Baxcalibur's high space attack. Terra Water was a good option here from Fiona. You know, this is just resisting the Steel type stuff, and you can't even burn it anyway because of Thermal Exchange. So really, really nice there. And then from here, you know, I always like an Intimidate Pokemon with Tinglu, and Gyarados is one of those mons that you can pair with it. And Gyarados is really good this format just because of, like, first of all, Bundle dropped off a lot. Okay, so now this gives chance to Gyarados to come back into play. And then not only that, you get a flying resistance to the Tinglu stuff, right? Because everyone's complaining about, like, oh, I'm getting fissured. But then just use a flying type or use Terra Flying and you're good. And now Gyarados gives you that option, right? So you can pivot into that. And what is Tinglu going to do now? Not that much, because now you have a super effective water type attack against it. And, you know, really, really nice there. And Tinglu is also able to, you know, provide Intimidate support against some of the other physical attackers, like some of those multi-scale Dragonites. It also does well into the Arcanine stuff. And then even then just other physical attackers that you might find. Like Garchomp's example, you know, if they're not running Clear Amulet. You know, it's just a really, really good option there. And then Speed Control with Thunder Wave and Helping Hand is actually really nice here. Another supporting move here. But Thunder Wave, you know, just going for those para hacks, of course. Taunt is really good against, like, other Amoonguss and other setup mons. And then Helping Hand into some of these Pokemon that want to do, like, a bunch of chip damage is really, really good. The other set you can also consider here is Iron Head. And I think that one might be a little bit better than the Helping Hand, but it really all depends on the player preference. But Iron Head is really good on the Gyarados here, just because it allows you to get a Steel move onto the Fluttermanes, right? But I'm sure what Fiona is saying is I already got the Steel coverage on the Tinglu over here, so I don't really need Iron Head. So I'd rather just go the support move and just add in Helping Hand. And, you know, you could even go Protective, but again, still relatively fine. But this is one kind of variant with the Gyarados and the ChiYu. But then, what if you wanted the Arcanine here, right? So you can go the Arcanine route and still get the Intimidate option, but then you need a different water option, okay? And so as another representative of the Baxcalibur team, okay, let's take a look at that one. I think, yeah, we'll take a look at Charisma's here. This is also the same 6 that we put out a rental with. This is the same 6 that Reiki VGC and other players have been using also leading up to the tournament. This is the first Baxcalibur balance team, right? With the Arcanine Palafin stuff. So in this sense, you keep the Intimidate on the team by going with the Arcanine route, but your difference in the water option is the Palafin. And again, over here, the Intimidate is the Gyarados. The fire option is now the ChiYu, which also combos well into the Fluttermane, might I add. But in this regard, the way this one plays, this one's a little bit more defensive, not as much pressure on the special attack regard. But in that sense, you know, here we have this variant where, like, again, you're relying on the pressure from the Palafin and even the Baxcalibur to do a bunch of damage. Now, you do have to be aware of some matchups that are a little bit tricky, but that's okay. You have the magic button called Fissure, right? So, but this is the other Baxcalibur variant. I think both of them are very, very good. You might see the same 6 on ladder everywhere, depending on these two kinds of teams. But again, different sets and different EV spreads, I'm sure. But if you want a Baxcalibur balanced team, this is the way to do it. Just either use this variant with, you know, Gyarados and Fluttermane, or you go this variant with the Arcanine Palafin stuff. And again, if you want to do this one, we have a rental out for this already, and there's other rentals with the same 6 out already. So definitely give it a go. I understand that Fiona's also putting out a rental of her version soon, so, you know, that's another one that you want to consider. But yeah, Baxcalibur balance. If you look at the results, like, how many Baxcalibur balance teams did you see? Let's actually count it up here. So here's 1, here's 2 from Nate, Atmosphere VGC, and if we keep going down, there's 3 from Paul, okay, 4 from you know, Tyson, Charisma check, and then if we keep going here, you know, another one from Z, 5, 6, and then 7 from Giovanni. Look, 7's already a lot. And then is there any more after that? 8 from Ryan. Again, Canadian carpool. Okay, I get that. 8 from Ashton, and then look, we're already at 8, 9 shiny armor. Yeah, look, 9 of the Baxcalibur balanced teams were within the day 2 cut. So that's actually very, very significant in that sense because it works. It's a very, very good kind of core that has a lot of different options for, you know, most of the meta. So yeah, it definitely works. So if you're looking for a Baxcalibur variants, just use one of those 2 options. All right, let's move on to the next thing. Okay, the next thing I also want to look at is the fact that you don't need a Treasure of Ruinmon on your team to do well. And I always get this question sometimes from newer players whenever I show them like a certain squad, and they always tell me, well, where's the Treasure of Ruin? Where's the Chien-Pao? Where's the tinglu? And I tell them, look, if it doesn't fit the team, you don't need to force it on there. Like, I understand this is a format where you can use the Treasure of Ruin, but you don't have to use it. Okay, because depending on the team composition and what you're trying to do, maybe it's not a fit. Okay, and that's okay. And this tournament was pretty evident of that because there were, I think, maybe like 8 or 9 teams that did not have a Treasure of Ruinmon, but they were able to top cut. So let's look at some examples. Like example number 1 from our man Joe. Okay, if you look at Joe's team, this is something that he's been pretty much using for a lot of, you know, Scarlet and Violet, where he had a previous variation back in Series 1 with like Garchomp, Grimmsnarl, and then, you know, King Gambit, Gyarados, that kind of thing. And then there was an Arcanine as well. But now he just adapts this into Series 3, regulationC, and now he has this. So like Terrafire Garchomp is really good. Nice against the fairy stuff, and even like the Fluttermane, the ChiYu combination. I was gonna say Flutterfish, which I guess you can call it, right? Flutterfish. So like, you know, you go for Terrafire, you resist their fire move, you resist their fairy move. And then you're just able to deal big damage right back with like earthquake stuff. And both of them don't have great physical defenses anyway. So, you know, you can always just go for that. And then, you know, King Gambit, you know, Terra Flying, again, good synergy with the Garchomp. And the Assurance is actually really, really nice into a lot of different things. You just do so much damage here. And of course, you have a steel coverage move for the opposing Fluttermane. Talonflame just gives you a little bit of speed control with Tailwind. I think it's kind of like but I guess it works a little bit in that regard. You do get a Will-O-Wisp user, so I guess in that sense, you do need it for that. The Bundle and the Amoonguss is also relatively fine here. Bundle dropped off a little bit, but I guess Joe liked it, and Terraghost is actually pretty good here. Icy Wind for good speed control, of course. You know, you're just able to break Focus Sashes that way as well. So really, really good. And of course, this is just a very solid team, like Dragon, Fairy, Steel, Fire, Water, Grass. Right, you can't go wrong with balanced teams like this. So again, you don't need to put a Ruination on here. Like you might say, well, instead of the Talonflame, maybe I could put ChiYu. I mean, you can, but you know, Talon's actually pretty valuable on teams like this. You just make your Iron Bundle, Fluttermane, and Garchomp go extremely fast, outspeed the other Iron Bundles and the other Fluttermanes and the other ChiYus. Okay, and then, you know, if you're able to outspeed them, then you win because a lot of those Pokemon are relatively frail. So, you know, you can do that, but is it recommended? I don't know. And here's another team. Let's look at Jarrett's team, right? Jarrett Spire. So again, this team is also very familiar where, you know, this is a, oops, I clicked that button. You know, great tough stuff. There's no Talonflame here. You don't need it. You do have the Mimikyu here, you know, the curse stuff, you know, really, really nice against Dondozo. Again, another Iron Bundle. Again, the few Iron Bundles that there were in the tournament actually were good in the top cut stuff. So yeah, King Gambit Terra Fire rather than Joe's Terra Flying. Really, really nice because you can't burn it. And then you can just deal a bunch of chip damage, you know, with your other moves, right? Especially like the Insurance, Terra Blast stuff. Terra Blast is also good against other steel types, so, you know, I do want to say that. And again, of course, nice into the Amoonguss stuff, if that ever comes up. But again, you know, also relatively nice against Fluttermane stuff. But yeah, great test here. Choice Scarf here. Choice Scarf. Focus Sash with Ice Spinner. Ooh, that's kind of cool. But no Earthquake. Makes sense, right? Because there's no flying type where you can, like, accurately find a position to do it. So, you know, just go with the Headlong Rush, Close Combat. And then Ice Spinner is really good because, you know, you don't have your Dragonite here. So you need Ice Spinner for that kind of balance against some of the Trick Room stuff to remove their terrain. So it makes a lot of sense. Arcanine, Amoonguss, again, that defensive backbone that you can always find. And again, Fire, Water, Grass core with the bundle as well. Again, just a relatively solid team. And then over here, from Grain Blakely, again, this is the Perish stuff, okay? Except, my mistake, there's no Perish. You're just trapping with Palafin. Okay, so again, even something like this can still do relatively well. There's not a lot of switches. You know, once you get a Nasty Plot, Make It Rain, and then you can just trap them with the Gothitelle stuff. So in that regard, yeah. And then, of course, Palafin, and Iron Hands. This two are always a relatively fine together. There's always good synergy because you're just able to hard switch your Palafin turn 1, Volt Switch after that with your Iron Hands, bring back the Palafin, and then, you know, put it next to the Amoonguss, and then you can just redirect all your attacks and start kicking Wave Crashes and Jet Punches and chip everything down. And then that'll be enough for like your Iron Hands or Goldango to potentially like just clean up in the end game, right? And then just like nasty plot, redirection stuff with the Amoonguss is actually really nice. Rocky Helmet's actually really good now. This is to chip the Dragonite and the Chien-Pao stuff because you can break their Sash and you can break their multi-scale on the Dragonite. So really, really good tech choice there. I liked it back in Series 1, so now it's actually really good again. So hopefully we can see more of that Rocky Helmet stuff instead of the Citrus Berry stuff, which I think should be just beyond the Arcanine anyway. But yeah, you can see, look, these are 3 teams that do not have a Treasures of Ruinmon, but we're still able to do well in a big regional tournament. So again, you have to ask yourself, am I forcing a Treasures of Ruinmon because it's the format, or do I actually need it? Okay, because if I don't need it, I don't need to force it, and instead go with a more flexible option that just makes more sense, you know. So that's where you have to ask yourself and evaluate your team. But this tournament is proof that you do not need a Treasure of Ruin Pokemon to do well. All right, let's move on. Okay, the other stuff I wanted to talk about is the Sun hyper offensive teams. So for example, if we look at Thomas McGreedy's team over here, basically, you know, you can imagine the Regulation B teams, but now you just adapted and you add Chien-Pao to this kind of core, right? So normally some of these teams would run like Dragonite, Great Tusk, along with like a King Gambit kind of thing with Lilycole. But now what you can do is just add a Chien-Pao to something like this. And now this can benefit the Dragonite and even the Great Tusk over here, where you can just do more physical damage. And you still have like the Lilligant Torkoal stuff where you're just going for Sleep Powder or after you plays, and then Torkoal just going for Eruption stuff. And then, you know, from here, the Fluttermane has the Choice Specs and is able to do a bunch of damage. And Power Gem here is really good against the Arcanine stuff. But these type of Dragonite teams, they definitely want to run Tailwind. And I believe we put out a rental, you know, something similar to this, where again, our Dragonite was Tailwind, but instead of the Chien-Pao, I think I had the ChiYu concept over here, where I just wanted to deal more damage with the Fluttermane stuff along with Torkoal. So that's another adaptation that I decided to do when I released my rental, but this is another cool way to do it. And you know, you can even see the wide lens Lilligant here over something like the Focus Sash, because you really want the Chien-Pao to have the Sash. But this can be either like Wide Lens or Covert Cloak, and now you just have like a little bit more accurate Sleep Powders, more accurate Leaf Storms. So yeah, there's a difference there. But then if you look and you scroll down, and if you look at Patrick's team, okay, so Patrick also had another kind of variation to Sun Hyper Offense. It's pretty much the same kind of team. Yeah, here it is. Here's Patrick. So Mr. Pedon's over here. So Mr. Patrick, he basically had another similar idea, but instead he went with the ChiYu kind of idea. Sounded kind of like what we did, but he took out the Great Tusk. So he's a little bit more on the special side here. But what the ChiYu can do now in the Sun is deal a bunch of damage, you know, with Heat Wave. Even your Fluttermanes now are doing more damage. And now what you could also do is, if your Torkoal is even in play, the Torkoal can also buff the ChiYu's damage as well, right? Because of the Sun stuff. So this is another way of doing it. But this Dragonite doesn't have Tailwind. It actually has Choice Band with the Extreme Speed, Stomping Tantrum stuff, right? So you need Stomping Tantrum now because you don't have the Great Tusk anymore. So you really want that ground coverage. But the interesting move over here is Facade, right? So another cool adaptation. And then Focus Sash here, but then Life Orb, Chien-Pao here. We tried Life Orb on our other team building video, if you remember. One of our first team building videos for regulationC. And it worked out relatively well. You know, it's just like Sash sometimes a little bit nice, but you know, Life Orb gives you some offensive damage calcs that you would not get if you do not have, if you had the Focus Sash instead, right? But other than that, the Fluttermane set is still relatively the same. Then if you look at Nick Safranek's team, right, another kind of Sun Hyper offense where you do have the Murkrow, even though it's not really around as much, but you know, the Murkrow has Sunny Day and Tailwind, right, which is really, really nice because now what you can do with the Great Tusk is you can make it fast, and now you can buff its damage with Sunny Day, right? Assuming it is an adamant natured Great Tusk. But also in addition to that, you know, because Headlong Rush is, you know, reducing defenses, same with Close Combat, now you can haze those debuffs away with the Murkrow. So this is another cool way of doing it. And again, you still have the ChiYu over here with the Sun stuff. So again, I really like ChiYu and Sun. I feel like ChiYu along with Fluttermane is like probably the best duo in terms of offensive pressure that you have in regulationC. And then you have like the Goldango, you know, whatchamacallit, the Brute Bonnet stuff. And by the way, Brute Bonnet is actually really interesting in this format. The Dark Grass typing is not too bad, especially you have stuff like, you know, Bullet Seed where you're just able to chip stuff and break Sash. You know, that's always really nice. And then you just have more pressure with the boost thanks to the adamant nature, the photosynthesis stuff, right? Then you also still have Rage Cloud and Spore, which is something that these other teams don't really have, because now you have a 100% accurate sleep condition, and then you have redirection support. So it's really nice. Then if you look at Justin Knox's team, you know, 45 mice, and this is another cool thing with the jump fluff here with the Tailwind stuff, and you still have Sleep Powder and Leaf Storm, similar to Lilligant, but you also get access to Encore, which is really nice. And again, you have Chlorophyll, which is again also really, really nice, and it's a little bit faster than the Lilligant, right? So there's the benefit there. Torkoal here is Eject Pack, which is actually really, really cool. So what you can do here is just go for Overheat, switch out into something like either Fluttermane or the Great Tusk. So that's really, really cool, and I like that idea a lot. I may consider trying that myself one time. And then from here, again, Fluttermane specs. All of these teams have specs Fluttermane, right? You just want a lot of damage on your Fluttermane stuff. And Thunderbolt is really cool here. It's able to put pressure on the Gyarados and the Palafins as well. So there's that kind of concept. But, you know, other than that, you know, it's just a relatively solid Great Tusk team, you know, that thrives in the sun. There's no Dragonite here either, so you don't really need the Tailwind support because from Dragonite, so because you already have the Jump Fluff, right? So there's the idea there. And then here's the Sash Chien-Pao. Okay, and then King Gambit on this team, right? And remember, this was on the original Regulation Beat kind of Sun Core, so now we see it back. So yeah, if you're trying to build a Sun team, Sun Hyper Offense, I would just use one of these 4 cores and then just go from there. But it's really, really cool, especially this Torkoal set, because if you look at the other Torkoals, first of all, this doesn't even have a Torkoal, but these other two with Torkoal, of course, they're like charcoal, you know, just eruption stuff, right? But then Justin over here, Justin Knox, says, you know what, we're just going to make Torkoal supportive and just go for Yawn Helping Hand plays. Let the other Pokemon deal the damage, and we're just going to support with Yawn Pressure, right? And also, you know, getting that swish after clicking the Overheat button is actually really, really cool. I remember something like Salazzle being able to do that back in Regulation, I think A it was, right? And then I remember, was that a Jamie Boyd set? I think it was. So it's really cool to see Torkoal use it here. But yeah, I think Sun Hyper Offense is really, really good. It puts on a lot of pressure, and you might see a lot of these in the upcoming I call it the IC, but you know, it's that little tournament event where, you know, over the weekend coming up where you get 15 battles a day for 3 days. So 45 total. It reminds me of the IC in Sword and Shield, right? I'm just going to call it the International Challenge. So yeah, Sun Hyper Offensive teams are going to be really good to use in that kind of event, because, you know, 15 games, you know, for each of the 3 days, it's a lot of games, right? And you want to get through the games relatively quickly, so you still have like good mental stamina, good mental fortitude. Because if you play like those long positional games with squads that are like a little bit more passive, a little bit more balanced, sometimes, you know, 45 games is a lot you know, when you're trying to do that. So if you want to just play like, you know, a little bit more hyper offensive stuff, you can get through those games relatively quickly and, you know, preserve yourself. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, Sun Hyper Offense is a very, very good kind of team that you want to use. You know, it got good results in this tournament. So yeah, moving forward, I expect to see it again. All right, the next thing I also wanted to mention was the fact that you have every single Ruined Pokemon in the top 8, but there is no Wo-Chien in the top 8. Like, where is he? Look at it. You know, you got 4 Tinglus in here. You got 2 Chiyus. And you got 3 Chien-Paos, but where are the Wo-Chiens? They're not here. So that was a bit of a shocker, somewhat. I knew it wouldn't win, but I at least expected to see at least 1 or 2 in the top 8, but there are none. And if you take a look at the entire tour here, I think there was only a handful, maybe like 5 within day 2 cut or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But, you know, the fact that there was not as much Wo-Chien this time around, when so many people were complaining about it online, just makes things a little bit more interesting in terms of like where it is in the meta. And I think because it has like the Glimmora stuff and some of the Gyarados combinations as well, it just it's a little bit passive, and then some of the aggressive teams are just able to overpower it, right? So let's find some of these Wo-Chien teams. Like here, let's look at this one from Dylan. I like this one a little bit just because it has Maushold here and Annihilape. I think this is one way to play Wo-Chien stuff, but I think the route with Glimmora and or Gyarados is the way to go. I mean, this team is pretty cool from Dylan, but let's look at some other ones where we have that kind of combination. Again, all right, so this one from Enrique. So I guess you can put it with Dondozo. We'll talk about Dondozo Glimmora in a second, but yeah, here's another one with Wo-Chien. Again, with the leech seed stuff, able to chip things a little bit. And then this is Giga Drain for a little bit more recovery. There's an Aguaberry here. Okay, sure. What else is there? Oh, here's this one from Allison. This one has Iron Hands with Gyarados. It's actually a pretty cool combination. But yeah, here we go. Here's the Sash Glimmora, and here's the Fluttermane stuff with the Wo-Chien. I think this, and here's the Gyarados. This is the other one I was waiting for. But yeah, you know, the idea with Wo-Chien and Gyarados, and not Gyarados, but Wo-Chien and Glimmora is that you're able to set up leech seeds, and then you're just able to, you know, set up your toxic spikes, and if you want to pivot out from the leech seed, then you get poisoned, right? And then you just keep on taking chip damage after chip damage until eventually things like Fluttermane and Iron Hands are just able to clean you up, right? So something like that. We released our rental, released it yet, but it's coming soon. The rental that I gave Fridge, you know, he got 69th rank in this tournament, so he got 6-3, able to get 40 CP. We'll release that rental soon. It does involve Wo-Chien Annihilape, along with Glimmora with Maushold Annihilape, but that'll become soon. But yeah, you know, and the other thing, the reason why the Wo-Chiens didn't really do so well is look at all the Amoonguss. Like, remember what we were saying? Like, Amoonguss is actually a really, really strong counter to Wo-Chien, right? Because the thing is, you have access to Pollen Puff, which Wo-Chien is 4 times weak to. You can't leech seed it because you're a grass type. And then the other moves itself, you know, they just don't really deal damage into it. Like, Foul Play is not going to do anything to Amoonguss. You can use Ruination, but then you can just switch it out and come back in. And, you know, Ruination doesn't kill the Amoonguss anyway. And, you know, Pollen Puff does kill you. So that's the other thing. Like, the fact that every single team has Amoonguss, and then the Arcanine stuff is also able to pressure it, you know, because you're a fire type in that sense as well. So, you know, Amoonguss is just a real Wo-Chien killer. So as long as all these teams are running Amoonguss, that in itself is your Wo-Chien counter. So we'll see how Wo-Chien adapts, but I think it's still in a decent spot, especially with like Fluttermane, Glimmora stuff. I know Gyarados is still pretty good with it, the Whirlpool stuff, but I think that's still a little bit of passive, and I think it has to be a little bit more aggressive if it wants to do a little bit more into something like this. But all right, but you know, I still think Wo-Chien is a pretty good you know, Treasures of Ruin Pokemon, and I expect it to do a little bit better in the upcoming turns than it did here. And they just have to figure out ways to you know, get around the Amoonguss stuff. All right, so let's keep on moving forward. Okay, so not only did you see a lot of Baxcalibur balance teams, but you also saw a lot of ChiYu Fluttermane cores, and you know, these two are very impressive, right? Because not only are they super fast, but they're also relatively bulky on the special defense end, and then they also deal a bunch of damage with special attack, you know, base 135, and then you add the fact that there's Beads of Ruin on the field, and now if something like Fluttermane has, you know, something like a Choice Specs, and now if the ChiYu has something like a Life Orb, these two as a duo are dealing like a whole bunch of damage, and they both support each other relatively well in terms of like the weaknesses. You know, if you consider Fluttermane being weak to something like Steel types, the ChiYu is just able to blow that up, you know, because you're a Fire type. And then, you know, ChiYu being weak to fighting, you're just able to switch that into your Fluttermane, and Fluttermane handles those fighting types relatively handily, right? So they have some synergy together in that regard in terms of defensively. But then you just add stuff like, you know, Dazzling Gleam, you know, Moonblast, and then Shadow Ball, of course, and then some tech move. Either it's like Power Gem or Thunderbolt. You know, for the sake of it, we'll put Thunderbolt here because I think it's a little bit better right now just because of the Gyarados stuff. Here you can just simply go like Overheat, Heat Wave, Dark Pulse, and then something like either Snarl, Psychic, or, you know, some other tech move that you want to try and throw in here. But, you know, either way, the ChiYu is doing a bunch of damage, and, you know, along with the Fluttermane, with the Choice Specs, these two are just like overpowering a lot of different teams. And, you know, I've chosen a couple of my favorites that I've seen throughout the tournament. Let's look at Ben Larson's team over here with ChiYu Fluttermane. This is a leftovers ChiYu with Substitute. I'm gonna say that this is a bulky set, and the Fluttermane has Life Orb, Terra Ground, Terra Blast. Okay, that's probably for the Steel types, I would imagine, right? This is actually a really cool team because now you also add the Gyarados stuff with Dragonite and Chien-Pao. And then Iron Hands for the, the fake out stuff. No Volt Switch, that's okay. But this is a very interesting team. I like it a lot because you could do like Gyarados, Fluttermane leads and then just intimidate them. And then you could even like swap out the Gyarados or even just trap them in with like Whirlwind stuff or even taunt them. And then you can technically swap them out for ChiYu, and then Fluttermane just goes ham with some of its fairy moves, right? So there's the idea there in that regard. Or you could do like Fluttermane ChiYu leads, but then the reverse side, swap out the Fluttermane and go into the ChiYu, the Chien-Pao, and now Gyarados is doing a bunch of damage with the waterfall. At least a little bit more. Maybe not a whole bunch. I would imagine this is like more of a bulky set, but that's how you can also play this kind of team. All right, and then you have Nate's team, which is kind of the same kind of composition as Fiona's, but the Baxcalibur balance that again features the Gyarados here. But then you have the Fluttermane ChiYu, which is able to support this whole team relatively well. But the only thing is, I don't know how I like Tinglu and ChiYu on the same team. Like this is reducing, special, defense. Oh, actually, yeah, this is reducing special attack damage, but then you're just nerfing your own Pokemon. So I don't know in that regard, but at least in terms of like synergy wise, it does relatively well. And then you have Jody Azarelli's team, which I forgot to cover in the Sun section. Somehow I skipped over it, but again, ChiYu Fluttermane here, especially with like the Sunny Day Murkrow over here is just doing relatively well. You're boosting the damage of your own ChiYu, and then you're boosting the Fluttermane because of the photosynthesis. So I think it's a really, really cool concept with these three as a core. Of course, Great Tusk definitely comes if you're going to use this kind of stuff. And then these two are a little bit more interchangeable. Yes, from what I understand, he had the Corviknight Choice Band as the last slot. I don't know if that's like the final solution, but I guess it works out relatively well in that sense. But oh, you also enabled this guy, the Brute Bonnet. Yeah, this is a very solid 5. I can understand like why this 6 was a little bit more interesting in terms of like trying to figure out what you can cover for, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, definitely moving forward, I can definitely see like a lot of ChiYu Fluttermane cores doing a whole lot. And some people have even tried like adding Glimmora into this, where you're just having your Glimmora deal a lot more damage too, right? Base 130 is actually really, really strong. So I could definitely see some of these three coming together in a future regional and future online tours and whatnot. But yeah, I just wanted to make note of that. All right, so and then speaking of Glimmora, that brings us to our next topic, Dondozo Glimmora squads. Let's take a look. So yeah, Dondozo Glimmora team. So Dondozo in series or regulation C, I should again say, it has fallen a little bit just because the nerf to order up stuff, and then the ruined Pokemon actually kind of hindered it quite a bit, especially the reduction in the special defense department. But it's still pretty okay. It does have some top cut results over here in this tour. I feel like it's always gonna find a way to try and get some top cut results. But there's not that many, right? There's only like around 4 of them, so I would almost put this in like a B tier, just because of what has transpired. But you never know. It might have a comeback in the next story. Someone might think of something. But we'll get to Nails' team in a second because this one is like solo Dozo with no Tatsugiri. Let's look at Lev Willie's team over here with the Fluttermane stuff. And not Fluttermane, the Dondozo Tatsugiri with Glimmora in the back end. And again, this Dondozo, it does have Order Up Substitute Earthquake. That's fine, but then if you look at Glimmora, you're just able to chip stuff relatively well, especially the bulk behind the Sulfus along with Maushold stuff. You're just able to go for Mortal Spin, set up Toxic Spikes. Things are taking a lot of chip damage, and then Dondozo kind of just cleans up in the ending game because everything has just been chipped so much. And the bulk behind Maushold is relatively nice because you can keep the Glimmora alive. It's also good with Dragonite, and it's good with chienpao because Dragonite hiding behind Choice Band, along with the bulk from Frengar, is just asking for a lot in terms of like, well, how do I stop this? Okay, same with Chien-Pao over here. So this is a cool Dondozo Glimmora squad. Then if we keep going, we see another one from Jesse over here. All right, Jesse over here had Iron Treads in this regard, but again, you can still see the Glimmora in the back end, right? With Mortal Spin, Earth Power, Power Gem, Sludge Bomb. I like that set a lot. This is the speedier Tatsugiri, I believe. But again, another core where you have Dondozo Tatsugiri along with Glimmora. I think those two work out relatively well together in terms of synergy wise. Okay, if we keep on going, I think there's a couple more here. Here's another one, but this one just has Fluttermane ChiYu, no Tatsugiri. I'm sorry, no ChiYu yet. Over here actually, Mason. All right, so Dondozo Tatsugiri, and then here's Fluttermane ChiYu, and then you see the what was it called? Oh wait, no, this one has no Glimmora. This one's just straight up Dondozo. Oopsie, sorry about that. I was looking for specifically for Dondozo Glimmora. So this one from Allison, this was again, we just peeked this. This is another Glimmora team. Enrique, we briefly touched upon it, but now we're gonna look at it a little bit more because this one has the, where was it? Right here. This one has the Glimmora on it. So Dondozo Tatsugiri with Glimmora along with Wo-Chien. I feel like, again, Wo-Chien Glimmora is a really, really good core. And then from there, you just go for stuff like Iron Hands and Volcarona. Support with Fake Out, and then support with Tailwind and Will-O-Wisp and Struggle. This is a goated Volcarona set. I love this Volcarona set, because you have 3 supportive moves and 1 attack move, which is kind of another good way to try and play Volcarona. I would say it's doing a great job on this kind of team. So shout outs to Enrique Grimbaldo's Volcarona set. All right, as we keep going, and just to find a couple more of these, if there is any, where there was Dondozo plus Glimmora. There actually wasn't even that many Dondozo Glimmora. There was only like a couple. So in that regard, you understand, like, okay, Dondozo, not bad, but I'm going to do a little bit more. Glimmora, you like to lead with Glimmora, and then just finishing off with the Dondozo endgame. So it's definitely very possible, type of lead situation where you want to either lead the Glimmora or lead something else. But yeah. Anyway, moving forward, I definitely expect to see a little bit more Dondozo. I know it's struggling a little bit in this format, but at the very least, Glimmora is still pretty good. So like Dondozo Glimmora specifically should continue to do well. Just because of the coverage that all 3 of them get together, and they compensate a little bit for each other's weaknesses. So in that regard, I think those 3 Pokemon are relatively nice together. And if we look at Nails' team, just before we go into the next topic here, just for Nails' team, all right, Nick Navarre, of course, he had solo Dondozo with Protect, Liquidation, Yawn, and Heavy Slam. So he's saying that, I can just force you guys out of position with Yawn, and then from there, I'm able to just deal a bunch of damage with either Dragonite, Goldango, or Fluttermane, because you have to switch out. If you don't, you're going to fall asleep. So these guys are saying, oh, that's cool by me. I just got 3 big hitters coming in, and then, you'll be done. So this concept from Nick is really, really nice. And then you support the overall bulk with tinglu. You reduce the special attack damage into your Dondozo, into your Dragonite, even into your Iron Bundle, which is very, very useful, I would say. So good placement there with Nick Navarre, and good use of tinglu in this regard. But let's move on to the next thing. Okay, the next duo I also want to take a look at and spotlight is the Maushold Annihilape stuff. Now, it didn't do so well in this kind of tour, but I do expect Maushold Annihilape to do even better moving forward. I think those two just do relatively well into the format, and there's a couple of Maushold Annihilape teams that managed to do at least day 2 cut. So if we take a look here, let's look at Dylan's team here. So this one is, Maushold Annihilape with, ChiYu Fluttermane stuff. Now, again, with the fighting coverage being so important into the format, because, you're up against the Treasures of Ruin Pokemon, which are dark types, I think fighting coverage is really, really nice. And Annihilape can give you that pressure immediately. And also with the Maushold, you're able to redirect a lot of things, add, Friend Guard to, the rest of the team. And then, next to Choice Specs Fluttermane, you can just protect your Fluttermane and just do a whole bunch of damage with your Dazzling Gleam pressure, and then just clean up in the end game with, like, ChiYu and then Maushold over here, like they have over here. So the other thing you can also consider is, the Icy Wind pressure. And this trio right here, Bundle, Fluttermane, and the ChiYu over here, I think these 3 are relatively strong together just because of the special defense reduction that you're going to have, and then these 2 just do so much damage. But Maushold Annihilape, I think they'll do a lot better than they did over here. There was another team that also utilized this. Oop, that's another one. Oh yeah, right here from Bobby's team. So another Maushold Annihilape team with Amoonguss and the Goldango, another very interesting kind of core. But again, you're able to redirect stuff, set up the nasty plot, double redirection actually, and then this is just a little bit more extra security against the Wo-Chien stuff. Because of the Pollen Puff pressure, Clear Smog for removing buffs. But again, just having that coverage is really important. And then with the Terra Fire stuff, you're able to at least resist the Fluttermane Fairy move, and then just deal super effective damage right back, with a Rage Fist. And then from there, just having a lot of pressure, with after bulk up, you know, you're just able to recover over time, alternate your protects. So this way, you know, you're getting a little bit more health back. But, you know, when you have bulk up setup and then you combine this with friend guard, you just become a little bit more harder to remove, which I think is really important. And then, of course, with the Wo-Chien on this side, you know, you're just reducing physical attack damage in general. So even if you're Terra Fire, the Palafin's going to have a little bit of a harder time, you know, trying to beat you. But in that regard, I do expect Maushold and Annihilape to continue to do well. I know there was only a little bit of a showcase here in Fort Wayne, but I still think they're pretty good. All right, so expect to see more of them moving forward. But let's keep going to the last couple topics that I have in the video. Okay, so the next thing I also wanted to look at was the value of Ceruledge here. And I think Ceruledge is actually a little bit more slept on because if you can consider Ceruledge and the power of Chien-Pao, okay, you know, the thing is with Ceruledge and Chien-Pao, you're able to pick up Fluttermanes, right? Because now the Shadow Sneak is doing extra damage thanks to Chien-Pao. And then from there, you just beat the Arcanine stuff, right? Because you can't really intimidate this because it has a clear amulet. And then you can't really click a fire move either because you have Flash Fire. It's just going to make your attack stronger. And then also when you combine it with Chien-Pao and you just add Bitter Blade Pressure, you know, it just does so much more damage. And then you're just able to recover more damage, right? If you just have more strength from the Chien-Pao next to the Ceruledge. And then from here, you know, this is actually a pretty cool team. You know, you got the Dragon Fairy Steel Cobra, like Salamence, Corviknight, Fluttermane over here. And then just providing Tailwind support for the entire team, just making it extra fast. This is actually a really, really nice squad. So shout outs over here to Maurice, you know, coming with this kind of thing. But, you know, and then if you look at Connor's team here, which also utilizes the Ceruledge, I also like it next to Gyarados for that matter. It's actually pretty nice. And here is the Glimmora ChiYu stuff, so that's also relatively interesting. But yeah, Ceruledge is actually very, it's in an interesting niche, and I think it can do well if it's on those Chien-Pao cores. And even on some of those teams that didn't quite make day 2 cut, it's still also pretty relevant in getting some CP. So if I were to just scroll down some of these teams over here, yeah, you see here's another one from Mars, another Ceruledge team with Glimmora, Fluttermane, and Gyarados. Again, this is the kind of core that I would expect to see, and I think someone else built this kind of team. I don't remember off the top of my head. Was this Fede Campo? I think it was, right? Where he had the Sash Glimmora and the Tinglu on this. So yeah, this is actually the best, in my opinion, this is probably the best kind of Ceruledge composition where you just have the Tinglu support, you know, reducing special defense, and then you have the Gyarados, you know, intimidating stuff. Not reducing special defense, reducing special attack is what I meant from the Tinglu, right? And you might say that's a little counterintuitive, with, you know, when you're next to Fluttermane and Glimmora, but that's okay. Again, you're supporting the Ceruledge over here, and then the Gyarados is just able to trap stuff with Whirlwind, and then, you know, you can just do the poison stuff with Glimmora, and, you know, click Venoshock when things are poisoned, and then they're just taking chip damage over time. The only thing with this kind of Gyarados is, you know, Whirlpool is only about 85% accurate, but that's still pretty good, right? But I definitely like these cores. They're actually relatively good. And I think if you had to use Ceruledge, I would use this 6 that Fede developed, and then other people have adapted. So I think it's actually really, really nice. But yeah, I mean, those are just some of the topics that we saw, you know, run through the regional. So let me know what you think of what you saw from Fort Wayne, and let me know what you think is going to happen moving forward. We got EUIC coming up, and a lot of you have also started booking your sessions with me, you know, to get those squads ready for either EUIC or a couple of the regionals afterwards. So if that is something you're interested in, and again, if you check the video description and the comment section, we have a link for our coaching, which is basically team building, where we can get you that squad that you need for these upcoming tournaments. So if you just check there, we have the link to join as the tier 3 sub to the channel, or every single video has a join button where you can also, for the same thing, join with the click of a button, and then from there you can just message me on Discord and we start coordinating a time to meet, and, you know, we get you the squad that you want overall. All right, so that'll be it for now. Next time, guys, we'll be back with another video. Peace out and have a good night.